What does it actually take to grow your legs at home with resistance bands? That is a huge question, and there's a lot of people out on the internet that say that you can't even actually do that. Today, I want to walk you through 5 key tips that will actually allow you to get the hypertrophy and strength growth that you're looking for with bands. All right, let's start with tip number 1. Load up the resistance. What do I mean by that? Your legs are used to carrying around heavy loads all day, like they're supporting all of your body weight and you are moving and functioning on them. So they're used to already carrying significant loads all day long. So in order to grow these and in order to progress beyond where you're at, you have to go beyond what they're normally used to carrying. So like grabbing a light band and doing 3 sets of 15 front squats and calling it a day, that's not going to get you anywhere. You need to have significant load so that you're failing, like completely failing in that hypertrophy rep range, that 10 to 20 rep range. And on your last few reps, you should basically be like excruciatingly grinding through these reps and failing to like not even be able to get back up in the rep. That's how you know you're getting to true failure and training some real high resistance. And to achieve high resistance levels comfortably, you're going to want to have a good set of bands with a wide variety of resistance levels. So at Clench Fitness, we have a very wide variety of resistance levels ranging from this light 5 to 15 pound band all the way up to this big bad 400 pound 4-inch wide gray band. And when you're leg training, you're going to want to stay away from the lighter bands. Like if you've been doing the same purple band for front squats for the last 3 years and you're not getting anywhere, well, that means you need to start bumping up the resistance level. It's just like with free weights. Every week you're trying to bump that resistance level up. And you do that by either stacking bands together or using larger bands all the way up to these bigger, like huge bands. And ultimately, like where do most of our customers fit for leg training with bands? It's going to be somewhere in this like purple, green, blue range. And if you're more advanced, definitely getting into the orange and the gray. Now, when it comes to actually applying these resistance bands to exercises, we kind of have to optimize our exercise selection to allow us to be able to achieve these heavy loads, because with resistance bands, not all exercises are going to be able to get set up properly and allow you to get a good strength curve through the full range of motion. So that being said, we kind of have 2 different groups of leg exercises. We have the compound lifts, which involve multiple muscle groups and are kind of more of the old school kind of staple exercises like squats and deadlifts. And then you have other exercises, isolation exercises like leg extensions, hamstring curls, stuff like that, that targets, smaller muscle groups in the legs, but can still grow them significantly. And I find that the compound exercises are the most challenging exercises to be able to actually set up properly and get a real good strength curve and actually get high resistance. And then with the isolation exercises, those are going to be easier because you're not going to need as much resistance, and the setup for these isolation exercises lends itself to be a lot more user-friendly, especially with resistance bands. So let's talk about a couple of compound exercises that I highly recommend putting into your programs like every single week. The first is an X-band squat. This allows you to basically use heavy resistance because you're using a pair of 41-inch resistance bands, and you're going to be stepping down into the bands so that you can actually load them up and start in a non-compromised position where you're the strongest. So you want to be able to load the exercise where you're the strongest so that you could have the highest amount of resistance and then kind of go through that range of motion as much as possible. So the X-band squat is like one of the only ones that you can do that. And you can do a couple of different variations. I do like a standing variation, and then I also do one up against the wall with a foam roller to be like more like a hack squat. And those 2 exercises are like premium resistance band home squat exercises. The other one that I really like is a deadlift, because you can also achieve a high level of resistance right out of the start, and the strength curve feels good, and you're in a non-compromised position when you're loading that up, and you can just stack the bands up to the moon until you fail out of it. All right, so now for a couple of compound exercises that I don't feel are as effective, but I see a lot of people doing them out there. One is a front squat. And what I don't like about this is that you're getting down into this joint compromised position to load it up. So you're not going to be able to put nearly as much load as you would if you start in a non-compromised position. All right, let's, for example, take this big gray band from Clench Fitness. And I'm going to set it up like I would for an X-band squat. So I'm going to drape one of these over my shoulder. Typically you have two. I'm showing you one. And one band is going to put out around 150 to 200 pounds of resistance in this given range of motion. And setting it up is tricky, but it's still doable. So I can lean down, stretch this band, load it up, get it right in the good position on my foot. Now I step down, and now I'm loaded. I'm non-compromised. I can do this, squat this all day. You put another pair on, and this is probably a good squat exercise for me. Now, if I were to set this up using a front squat, which is very common out in the resistance band world, whether you're doing just a band or if you're using a foot plate with a band bar, the loading is still the same. You're going to stretch this band out, and now you're going to be trying to get into this band in a joint compromised position. I'm going to get all the way down here, and I got to like figure out how to load myself into this thing, and then actually get back up and squat it. And like this, it doesn't feel super heavy through the range of motion, but you're limiting yourself by trying to load yourself into something that is just not optimal for heavy resistance. All right, now we can move on to tip number 2, which is keeping proper tension throughout the range of motion. This is very related to tip number 1, except now we're talking about the range of motion of a given exercise. We want to make sure that we get tension all the way through that exercise. Even though it is progressive, like it's going to be lighter at the bottom and heavier at the top, you want to make sure you have tension all the way through that range of motion. That is very critical, especially when training your legs, because tension is so critical for leg training. Now at Clench Fitness, literally every accessory product that we sell is designed to help you do just that. Manipulate the length of your bands so that you can get good tension throughout the range of motion. And we have a lot of accessories. We have our foot plate. We have our short carbon bar. We have our longer Nexus bar. We have our resistance band handles. We have our utility straps. We have carabiners, ankle straps. All of these things are designed to help take up length and make exercises more comfortable and more effective. Also, with this YouTube channel that you're watching right now, we have hundreds of videos on each and every specific exercise and how to optimize the setup. So if you're feeling lost on a certain thing, you can always just go to our channel, look up an exercise, and you'll find at least one, probably more than one video for those given exercises to help you set it up properly, because setup is so key for that. So let's walk through an example here of manipulating tension. We'll do a deadlift. So you can grab a single 41-inch band, you can fold it over, you can step on the band, and you can do a deadlift. But you notice here, I don't really have any tension at the bottom of the rep. And then as I kind of go through this, it feels okay. I'm feeling some stretch on my hands, but also it's really not that difficult for me, and my hands are already kind of compromised, and I don't feel tension at the bottom. So we can introduce some accessories from Clench, like our foot plate. So when I put this foot plate over it, it's going to take up more length. Now these loops on the bottom are shorter than they were before. And if I throw in one of our resistance band bars, this is the Carbon Pro bar, I can pop this on. Now that's going to take some of the discomfort off the hands, and also I get a little bit more tension at the bottom of the rep. So now when I'm going through this, this feels like a good deadlift. It's comfortable and I can execute it. And let's say maybe this bar is a little bit too short and I still don't have a whole lot of tension at the bottom of the rep. Maybe I'm a shorter person or whatever the case may be. I can try a different bar. I can use a longer bar here. That's gonna take up even more slack in the band and give us more tension out of the bottom of the rep. Now as I jump into this, I have even more tension at the bottom and it feels like a good deadlift. And another thing you might notice about this bar, we put free weight collars, free weight sleeves on the end so that you can actually put free weights on this to fully customize the strength curve and manipulate that strength curve even more. Another key point when adjusting band length or manipulating band length to get the proper tension strength curve throughout a range of motion is whether you use the full length method, stretching it fully like this, or doubling it over and stretching it in this manner. What do I mean by that? Let's take a hamstring curl, for example. So let's set it up in the full length method where I'm stretching this band fully. Just gonna clip into my ankle straps here. And we wanna do a hamstring curl. So of course, we gotta set this up so we're getting pretty good tension at the bottom. Notice with the full length method, I have to stretch this baby quite a long ways to even get tension at the bottom of the rep. And now as I kind of go through that range of motion, I have tension, but it doesn't feel as good as it could be. Like it feels like it might be too light at the bottom. And then as I kind of go through it, it might not be quite getting heavy enough at the top, or basically it just doesn't feel as good as it could. So one thing we can do is change it over to doubling this band over. Now we're gonna get more resistance in a shorter amount of stretch range. So it's gonna make that strength profile steeper, the strength curve steeper. And you may have to bump down the resistance of the band or the size of the band because you're doubling it over. So you're gonna actually double the output of the force here. And now that we're hooked in, can back myself away. Notice how I don't have to stretch it nearly as far. I'm already getting tension. Boy, this feels pretty good. And now, as I go through, boom, I got resistance all the way through that range of motion. A lot more solid, feels a lot better. That engagement feels better all the way through. I got a good squeeze at the top, and I still have good tension at the bottom of the rep. So that could be something to keep in mind when you're setting up these exercises. Tip number 3 is controlling rep tempo. Now, as you start increasing your resistance and trying to go for maximum weight, it is very easy to start getting sloppy. And one thing that I've learned over the years that took me many years for it to actually sink in is that moving weight and controlling the rep are two completely different things, and you are gonna get so much more gains and bang for your buck when you focus on control and resistance versus just resistance. Like if you're just putting max resistance on and doing whatever it takes to move that thing from A to B versus putting on a high level of resistance and controlling that tempo slowly, making every phase of the rep excruciating on yourself, you are gonna get so much more progress, and it's gonna be less risky because you're not gonna be doing these crazy joint movements and things like that that could potentially create injuries. So what do I mean by that? Let's take an X band squat, for example. So if I grab a couple of green resistance bands, now this is a moderate level of resistance, might be even on the lighter side for me, because obviously I showed you that I could hit reps with the gray bands, no problem earlier, but I wanna show you what controlling that rep actually looks like. So I'm gonna set this up, step into my bands here, nice and comfortably. Now I'm gonna do like a foam roller hack squat. Once I get all into my position here, everything's nice and comfortable. Now I could just kind of like start, yep, we're doing reps. There's 1, there's 2. This is probably what most people do in their sets. Now controlling it is gonna look a lot different. It's gonna be slower. And what I want you to do is feel every phase of the rep. So on the eccentric, that's the downward portion of this rep. And it's gonna be, the eccentric is half the rep and you're stronger in the eccentric. So you should take a good 3 seconds to go down, and then pause at the bottom for this isometric. That hurts. And now coming back up, you want to do it quickly and explosively. And then at the top, take another big squeeze of those quads. So then we're going to go slow down, pause it, change direction slowly, come back out of it, big squeeze. That is what a good rep really looks like. And trust me, like, I could make these green bands feel like gray bands by doing this level of control. Tip number 4 is unilateral exercises or single leg exercises. So most people are training with bilateral exercises, both legs at the same time, whether it's deadlifts or squats, leg extensions, they're focusing on 2 legs at a time. Now, if you really want to take your leg training up a notch, you need to incorporate unilateral exercises in your training. Why do we need unilateral training? Because it opens up a whole new set of variables and things that we can optimize. With unilateral training, you're going to be working on balance, core stabilization, as well as getting muscle imbalances taken care of so you don't have one leg stronger than the other one. And then also, with going back to tip 1 and 2, it's going to allow you to train heavier on a given limb, right? So if we basically take one leg out of the equation using similar resistance as what we would be able to set up comfortably with bands, you're going to put all that load into one leg, and that's going to drive strength and muscle gains, as well as all of the other benefits that I just mentioned. So what exercises are we talking about here? Some of my favorites are Bulgarian split squats, regular split squats, lunges, single leg RDLs, a B stance RDL, single legged leg extensions or leg curls, just to name a few. So when you're programming this stuff, you obviously want to keep those big compound movements, bilateral exercises like the squats and the deadlifts that we talked about before, but you also want to incorporate probably like 2 to 3 of these single leg exercises in your weekly programming to help mix it up and keep everything nice and balanced and keep those strength gains coming. Tip number 5 is get creative. When you're training at home, you may feel a little bit down because you don't have a squat rack, a leg press, hack squat, leg extension machine, all the cool machines that drive big leg growth. Don't get down, because we've already shown you that you can replicate a lot of those exercises pretty well, like with the X-band squat and the hack squat with the X-band configuration. But you can also do things that are beyond just replicating stuff that you see in the gym. For instance, there is a resistance band sissy squat that we've shown a million times on this channel that works so well because you get really good knee flexion, and then also at that top of the rep, you're stretching that band out and extending your quads, and it will light up your quads and create extreme levels of growth, and it feels just, it's a killer exercise. Like, I've never even been able to get more than like 7 or 8 reps in a set because it is so challenging and the pump is so extreme, and I don't get that with any other exercises, so I love doing that. There are a lot of other exercises like that that you can do. You just have to get creative. So there you have it. There are 5 tips that are guaranteed to elevate your leg training. If you follow these tips and throw them into your training, I guarantee you your legs will grow. They'll get stronger. They'll look more defined and better. And let me know in the comments which one of these tips or you might already be using, or which tips are new to you. And also, if you have anything that you can share about your leg training progress with bands, I want to know about it. We want to understand kind of like where you're at with your leg training, what kind of challenges you have, and how we can do better. Furthermore, if you liked what we saw or what you saw today, be sure to smash that like button. Also, if you want to see more content like this, like I mentioned before, we have hundreds of videos on this channel. I'm going to link a playlist with some leg exercises and then another video that YouTube thinks you should watch next. And also, if you need any of the bands or accessories that I showed today, head over to clenchfitness.com. We will hook you up. And if you need a coupon code, there is one down in the description for you. And thank you for watching.